I recently faced my own worst nightmare. The HOA president just sicked the FBI and IRS on my house over a black Jeep she swore was mine. And her reason? She said I was hosting secret meetings out of it. Funny thing is, the only thing under surveillance that day was her whole little empire coming apart. But let me start from the beginning. The red and blue lights painted my living room walls. One minute, I was watching a documentary about deep-sea fish. The next, my front yard looked like the 4th of July had come early. I muted the television. Outside, 2 dark sedans and a local police cruiser were parked at odd angles on the street, their lights flashing without a sound. This was Maple Ridge. We didn't do flashing lights. Our biggest excitement was the annual argument over the acceptable shade of beige for mailboxes. I walked to the door and opened it. A man in a crisp suit stood on my porch. Another was talking to a uniformed officer by the curb. The air was cool and smelled like freshly cut grass and trouble. "William Davis?" the man on the porch asked. He had a tired face, but sharp eyes. "That's me," I said. "Bit of a light show for a Tuesday night. Did someone's garden gnome go missing again?" He didn't smile. He held up a small leather wallet, and a gold badge inside caught the strobing lights. "Agent Santiago, FBI. This is Agent Evans, IRS Criminal Investigation." The other man, younger and with a tech nerd energy, gave a slight nod from the lawn. My stomach did a slow, lazy flip. FBI and IRS. That was a bad combination. That was the kind of combination that meant someone's life was about to get very complicated. I just hoped it wasn't mine. I paid my taxes. I didn't even speed. My life was a monument to being boringly lawful. "All right," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "I assume you're not here to sell me cookies." "We're conducting an investigation into financial irregularities concerning your homeowners association," Santiago said. His voice was calm, a low rumble. "We have reason to believe there's a significant fraud scheme in operation." That, I thought, was the least surprising news I'd heard all year. "You don't say?" "Let me guess. It involves our glorious leader, Brenda Foster." A flicker of something, maybe amusement, crossed Santiago's face. "Our investigation is ongoing. We can't name subjects. What we need, Mr. Davis, is a small favor. Your house has a clear line of sight to the community clubhouse and the president's residence. We'd like to position a surveillance van in your driveway for a few days. It's discreet. It looks like a plumber's truck. Your record's clean. You're the only resident with 0 HOA violations in 5 years," Evans added. "That made you the perfect baseline." I looked past him at the quiet street, at the identical houses with their perfectly manicured lawns. Brenda Foster, the self-appointed queen of our little kingdom, had made life here a masterclass in petty tyranny. She fined people if their garbage cans were visible for more than an hour. She measured the height of grass with a ruler. The idea of the federal government setting up shop in my driveway to watch her was, I had to admit, deeply appealing. It was like finding out the school bully was finally getting a visit from the principal. "A plumber's truck," I said. "Will it have a clever name like Flush Out the Fraud? Or We Fix Corrupt Leaks?" Agent Evans, who had walked over, cracked a smile. "We'll work on that. For now, it just says, Pipe Dreams Plumbing." "Cute," I said. "All right, you can use the driveway." Santiago handed me a clipboard with a short consent form. I signed it. Better safe than sorry. But if my prize-winning petunias get trampled, I'm billing the United States Treasury. They seemed to relax a little. Maybe they were used to people getting hysterical. I just wanted the problem solved. If they could get Brenda and her cronies out of our lives, they could park an aircraft carrier in my yard for all I cared. They moved their van into place. The fake plumber's truck blended in perfectly, just as Santiago promised. A beat-up white vehicle that did, in fact, look exactly like it belonged to a plumber who was barely staying in business. The other cars left, and the silence of a normal Tuesday night returned to Maple Ridge. I went back inside, my documentary forgotten. The deep-sea fish would have to wait. My neighborhood had its own sharks. The next morning, the trouble started for real. I was watering those very petunias when Brenda Foster's golf cart screeched to a halt at my curb. The Jeep across the street had nothing to do with the plumber's van in my driveway. Different vehicle, but Brenda didn't know that. She was a woman who seemed to be powered by pure indignation, with a haircut so sharp it could cut glass. She pointed a trembling, perfectly manicured finger at a black Jeep parked across the street. It was a clean, anonymous-looking vehicle. I'd never seen it before. "That's it," she shrieked, her voice a weapon designed to shatter peace. "That's your vehicle. The one you've been using for your secret meetings." I blinked, the watering can still in my hand. Brenda, I drive a sensible sedan that gets good gas mileage. That thing looks like it eats smaller cars for breakfast. It's not mine. Don't lie to me, William, she snapped. I have it on good authority. You're planning something. Something to disrupt the harmony of this community. You and your friends, meeting in secret, plotting. From the corner of my eye, I saw a curtain twitch in the window of the plumber's van. My new friends were watching the show. I decided to give them their money's worth. I put on my calmest, most reasonable voice, the one I knew drove Brenda absolutely insane. Brenda, the only thing I'm plotting is what to have for lunch. And with all due respect, the only harmony in this community is the sound of everyone gritting their teeth every time you send out a new fine. Her face went from red to a shade of purple I'd only ever seen on an eggplant. She was about to unload another volley of accusations when Agent Santiago stepped out of the van. He walked over slowly, his suit looking completely out of place in the morning sun. He didn't look at me. He looked right at Brenda. "Ma'am," he said, his voice quiet but carrying an unmistakable weight of authority. "Is there a problem here?" Brenda was momentarily stunned into silence. She looked from Santiago to the van, then back to me, her mind clearly racing, trying to fit this new piece into her puzzle of paranoia and control. She saw a strange man in a suit defending me, and her tiny, suspicious world tilted. I knew right then that she had just made me her number one enemy. I had brought an outsider into her kingdom. And for a queen like Brenda, there was only one punishment for treason. She was going to try to burn me to the ground. She just didn't know I was standing next to the fire department. She glared at me, a silent promise of war in her eyes, before spinning her golf cart around and speeding away. Santiago just watched her go. The black Jeep across the street remained, a silent black sentinel. I had a feeling my quiet life was officially over. Brenda had a new project, and that project was me. What I didn't know yet was how deep she was willing to dig my grave. To understand Brenda Foster, you had to understand Maple Ridge. People moved here for the quiet. They moved here for the good schools and the illusion of safety that came with high fences and a fancy gate. But that peace came with a price, the Homeowners Association. And for the last 5 years, Brenda had been the HOA. She ran it like her own private fiefdom. Her word was law. The treasurer, a nervous, sweaty man named Walter Finch, was her lapdog. He rubber-stamped every expense, every fine, every insane new rule she invented. Last month, it was a mandate that all doormats had to be a specific shade of taupe. The month before, she tried to ban wind chimes because she claimed their dissonant tones were affecting her property value. I mostly stayed out of it. I'm William Davis. I worked for 30 years as a logistics analyst for a big shipping company. My job was to look at complex systems, find the weak points, and make things run smoothly. I solved problems quietly and efficiently. When I retired, I wanted the opposite of that. I wanted no problems to solve. I wanted to read books, tend my garden, and perfect my recipe for barbecue ribs. My best friend, David, always joked that I was the most stubbornly peaceful man he knew. You could find the calm in the middle of a hurricane, Will, he'd said over the phone just last week. I guess we were about to test that theory. The problem was, I couldn't stand inefficiency, and I couldn't stand bullies. And Brenda's HOA was a masterclass in both. The fees kept going up, but the services seemed to get worse. The landscaping crew she hired, Maple Ridge Beautification LLC, charged a fortune but seemed to spend most of their time sitting in their truck. At the last quarterly meeting, I had made the mistake of asking a simple question. I stood up and asked Walter why we were paying $5,000 a month for horticultural maintenance when the only thing they seemed to maintain was a collection of dead bushes by the front gate. The room went silent. No one ever questioned the budget. Walter stammered and turned beet red, looking to Brenda for help. Brenda fixed me with a smile that was all teeth. She said she would look into it and thank me for my civic engagement, but I saw it in her eyes. I had challenged her authority. I had pointed out a crack in her perfect, pristine kingdom. In my old job, I identified weak points. I had just accidentally identified one here, and in doing so, I had painted a giant target on my own back. That's why she hated me. I wasn't scared of her. And for a person who ruled by fear, that was the one thing she couldn't tolerate. My small circle of allies was solid, though. There was my sister, Sarah. She's an emergency room nurse. She has a no-nonsense attitude that could stop a charging bull. She heard the tension in my voice when I told her about the feds in my driveway. "William," she said, her voice sharp and clear over the phone. "Be smart. People like that woman are a sickness. Don't let her infect you. Keep your head down, but keep your eyes open. She was my rock, the one who always reminded me what was real and what was just noise. Then there was Arjun, my next-door neighbor. Arjun was a software engineer who worked from home and was obsessed with technology. His house was a fortress of smart devices. He had more cameras than a movie studio, a collection of drones he called his Air Force, and he could probably hack into the Pentagon with his toaster if he got bored. He was a good guy, a bit nerdy, but fiercely loyal. He hated Brenda because she had tried to fine him for having a non-standard satellite dish, which was actually a vital piece of equipment for his job. And we had our comic relief, Vinny Costello, from down the street. Vinny was a retired salesman who treated every HOA rule as a personal challenge. When Brenda mandated the taupe doormats, Vinny put out a hot pink one that said, "The Queen is not welcome here." He racked up fines like they were points in a video game. He was a constant, cheerful thorn in Brenda's side, a reminder that her power wasn't absolute. A few days after the Jeep incident, the first shot was fired in Brenda's war against me. An email went out to the entire HOA board from a generic-looking address. The subject line was a concerned homeowner. I only found out about it because one of the board members, a quiet woman who was clearly terrified of Brenda, slipped a printout under my door. The email was supposedly from me. It was written in a stilted, overly formal tone, complaining about the current landscaping company and strongly recommending a new one, Supremescapes. It even included a ridiculously high quote. It was a clumsy forgery, but it was designed to make me look like I was trying to get a kickback from a new contractor. It was the beginning of her frame job. I took the printout over to Arjun's. He put on a pair of glasses and examined it like it was an ancient artifact. "Okay," he said, tapping his screen. "This is interesting. The language is all wrong for you, Will. You're direct. This is weaselly." He looked at the email header information on the printout. "It's not much to go on, but it gives us a starting point." He called my best friend, David, a digital ghost, because his online presence was almost zero. I like my privacy. I called Agent Evans. I read him the email. I could almost hear him smiling through the phone. "She's making a move," he said. "This is good. She's getting sloppy. She thinks she's clever, but she's leaving a trail. Can you get me the original digital file of that email?" "I'll work on it," I said. That night, I sat on my porch looking at the quiet houses. The plumber's van was a dark shape in my driveway. It was strange to think that my little corner of the world had become a battlefield. I had just wanted peace. I had just wanted to be left alone. But Brenda Foster had decided that wasn't an option. How far will a man go to defend his own? I never thought I'd have to ask myself that question. I was a logistics guy, a gardener, a man who liked his quiet. But she was coming after my home, my name. And she was about to find out that even the most stubbornly peaceful man in the world has a breaking point. She was about to learn that my specialty was analyzing a system, finding its weaknesses, and taking it apart piece by piece. The emails were like a slow poison. One became 3, then 5. Each was a little more aggressive, a little more detailed. They were all supposedly from me, sent to different board members. One demanded an immediate vote to hire Supremescapes. Another hinted at legal action if the board didn't comply. Brenda would then discover these emails and forward them to everyone else with a note attached, something like, "For the sake of transparency, I feel you all must see the kind of pressure Mr. Davis is attempting to exert." She was building a narrative brick by brick, painting me as a corrupt bully. The irony was so thick you could choke on it. I forwarded everything to Agent Evans. He was like a kid with a new puzzle. "She's using a proxy server to mask the origin," he told me over a secure line. "But she's not a pro. She's using the public Wi-Fi at the clubhouse. It makes it harder to trace back to her specifically, but it proves the emails aren't coming from your house." It was a piece of the puzzle, but it wasn't the whole picture. We could prove where they came from, but not who typed them. It was her word against mine, and she controlled the board. My sister Sarah called every night. "How are you holding up?" she'd ask, her nurse's voice cutting through the nonsense. "Are you eating? Don't let this woman make you sick." "I'm fine, Sarah," I'd tell her. "I'm just methodical. I'm collecting data." "Just be careful," she'd reply. "Rattlesnakes look like sticks until they bite you." I needed a stronger piece of evidence, something that pointed directly to Brenda. Arjun was my best bet. His front doorbell camera had a wide-angle lens. It covered his porch, his driveway, and a good chunk of my property, including my garage. We spent an evening scrolling through hours of footage. It was a mind-numbing marathon of mail carriers, squirrels, and teenagers walking by, staring at their phones. Then Arjun stopped. "Whoa, back up," he said, his fingers flying across his keyboard. He isolated a clip from the night before, around 2 o'clock in the morning. The infrared night vision made the world look like a ghostly negative. A figure dressed in dark clothing with a hoodie and gloves crept up my driveway. They moved quickly, staying close to the shadows of my hedges. My heart started beating a little faster. This was it. The figure reached the side door of my garage. I always left my old toolbox just inside the door, which I rarely locked. It was a bad habit, one I'd had for years. The person in the video clearly knew this. They slipped the door open, slid a white envelope into the top tray of the toolbox, and closed the door. The whole thing took less than 10 seconds. Then they were gone, melting back into the darkness. Can you get a look at their face? I asked, leaning closer to the screen. No, the hoodie is pulled too tight, Arjun said, zooming in. The image became a mess of pixels. But wait, he rewound the clip, playing it in slow motion. As the figure's arm extended to place the envelope, the sleeve of their jacket rode up just a little. For a split second, a bracelet on their wrist caught the faint infrared light. It was a thick, gaudy chain-link bracelet with some kind of charm dangling from it. That's something, Arjun said. That's a unique piece of jewelry. I felt a jolt of recognition. I had seen that bracelet before. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photo gallery on the HOA website. It was full of pictures from the annual Maple Ridge picnic. And there it was, a photo of Brenda Foster smiling her fake smile, handing a prize to a child. On her wrist was the exact same bracelet. It was her celebratory piece, the one she wore when she was showing off. The charm was a little gold-plated gavel. Of course it was. We got her, I breathed. Arjun, you're a genius. I'm a nerd with expensive hobbies, he corrected me, a huge grin spreading across his face. This is way better than video games. I sent the video file and the photo to Agent Evans immediately. He called back within minutes. This is it, Davis, he said, his voice buzzing with excitement. This is the physical act, planting evidence. That's a federal crime. We can move on this. What's the plan? I asked. Stay put, he said. Don't touch the toolbox. Don't go near the garage. Let her make the next move. She planted it for a reason. She's going to trigger the trap herself. We'll be ready. I hung up the phone and felt a strange sense of calm. The board was turning against me. My neighbors were starting to give me suspicious looks thanks to Brenda's whisper campaign. But I had the truth on my side. And now I had proof. The game had changed. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. We were hunting her now. The next morning, Brenda made her move. She didn't call the police. That would be too simple. Instead, she posted a message on the official HOA community forum. Dear neighbors. It began, dripping with false concern. There have been some troubling rumors of misconduct and potential theft of HOA funds. For the safety and security of our community, I'm calling an informal neighborhood watch meeting on the street this afternoon. I believe it's important we remain vigilant and keep an eye on any suspicious activity. She listed the location for the meeting. She probably timed the fake call so it would land right in the middle of her speech. It was directly in front of my house. She was planning to have me search publicly. She wanted to humiliate me, to have my neighbors watch as this stolen cash was found in my possession. It was a bold, vicious move, and it was exactly what Agent Evans had predicted. The trap was about to be sprung, but she had no idea she was the one who was about to be caught in it. The neighborhood watch meeting was pure theater directed by Brenda herself. About 20 people gathered on the sidewalk. Some looked angry, some confused, some just seemed to be there for the drama. Vinny Costello was there, of course, wearing a t-shirt that said, "I'm with the guy they're framing." Brenda stood in the middle of the street like a general addressing her troops. She gave a long, winding speech about protecting our community values and uncovering deceit. She kept glancing at my house, making it obvious who her target was. I stayed inside, watching from my window. Agent Santiago had called me. "Let her play it out, Davis," he'd said. "We have people in the crowd. Just sit tight." Sitting tight wasn't my strong suit, but I trusted him. Then Brenda's plan took a much sharper, more dangerous turn. My phone rang. It was the local police department dispatcher. "Sir, we've received a 911 call reporting a man matching your description at your address, waving a firearm and acting erratically." My blood ran cold. This was a whole new level. A false police report. She was trying to get me hurt. Or worse. "I'm standing in my living room holding a cup of coffee," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline dump. "There is no gun. This is a false report." "We have to respond, sir," the dispatcher said. "Please exit your house with your hands empty and visible." Two patrol cars, lights flashing, pulled up just as Brenda was finishing her speech. This was the climax she had planned. The cops would go in, find the money, and maybe I'd get roughed up in the process. She would be vindicated. Her neighbors would see her as the hero who saved them. The officers got out of their cars, hands on their holstered weapons. They were tense. They were expecting a threat. I opened my front door and stepped out, hands raised just as they had instructed. "Officers," I said calmly. "My name is William Davis. I'm the homeowner. There is no gun." Brenda gasped dramatically. "He could have hidden it. He's a menace." One of the officers, a sergeant with a graying mustache, ignored her. He looked at me, then at the scene. He saw the crowd, the HOA president pointing and shouting. He was a veteran cop. He could smell a setup from a mile away. "Sir," he said to me, his voice professional but not aggressive. "Can you tell me what you were doing right before we arrived?" "I was in my backyard," I said. "I was using a garden rake to clear some leaves from the flower beds." "He's lying," Brenda shrieked. The sergeant held up a hand to quiet her. "Mr. Davis, do you have any security cameras?" "A doorbell camera," I said. "It records motion. It would have recorded me coming back inside a few minutes ago. Would you be willing to show us the footage?" "Absolutely." I pulled out my phone, opened the app, and found the clip. I handed the phone to the sergeant. He and his partner watched the short video. It clearly showed me walking up my front path, carrying a long, metal garden rake. I opened the door and went inside. The timestamp was 3 minutes before they had arrived. The sergeant handed my phone back. He gave his partner a look. "This was a false report," he said loud enough for the crowd to hear. He turned to Brenda, his expression now hard as stone. "Ma'am, filing a false police report is a serious crime." Brenda's face went white. Her perfect plan was crumbling. She started to stammer, saying she was just relaying a concern from a confidential source. The sergeant wasn't buying it. He took her name and told her not to leave town. The officers got back in their cars and left. The show was over. The crowd started to disperse, whispering among themselves. They had come to see a villain get his due, but instead, they saw their HOA president get put in her place by the police. The tide of public opinion was starting to turn. Later that day, Arjun came over, his eyes wide. "You are not going to believe this," he said, holding up his tablet. He had been reviewing footage from one of his drones. It was a custom rig he built himself, loaded with thermal sensors and a 4K zoom lens. He had programmed it to do a quiet, high-altitude sweep of the neighborhood every night just to monitor for anything unusual. "I found something from last night by the pool." He played the video. It was a thermal image showing heat signatures in the dark, but it was unmistakable. Two figures stood on the pool deck. One was short and stocky, Walter Finch, the treasurer. The other was a taller man. They were standing next to one of the lounge chairs. Walter handed the man a thick envelope. The man opened it, took something out, and then handed Walter a smaller envelope in return. A cash drop. It was happening right under our noses. "That's the guy from Maple Ridge Beautification," I said, recognizing the contractor's build. "They're not even trying to hide it. They think no one is watching," Arjun said. "But someone is always watching." We sent the drone footage to Evans. This was the final piece. We had the motive, the fake contractor scam. We had the frame job, the emails, and the planted cash. We had the criminal act to cover it up, the false 911 call. We had Brenda's bracelet on camera at my garage, and we had her treasurer on camera making a cash drop. The whole crooked enterprise was laid bare. I felt a surge of cold, hard resolve. Brenda Foster had tried to destroy my life, to turn my neighbors against me, to put me in jail or even in the hospital. She had done it all just to protect her pathetic little empire of lies. She thought she could pressure me into breaking, but she had miscalculated. She didn't realize my entire career was about withstanding pressure and analyzing broken systems. And her system was about to experience a complete and total failure. The next move was ours, and it was going to be decisive. The drone footage of the cash drop changed the entire dynamic. We were no longer on the defensive. Agent Santiago and Agent Evans now had what they called an undeniable visual of the criminal conspiracy in action. It was time to stop reacting to Brenda and start making her react to us. It was time to shake the tree and see what fell out. I met with the agents in their plumber's van. It smelled like stale coffee and surveillance equipment. A bank of monitors showed live feeds from hidden cameras they had placed around the neighborhood. "She thinks the 911 call was a setback, but that she's still in control," Santiago said, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to Evans's restless energy. "We need to apply pressure, something she can't ignore. We need to go after the money, Evans added, tapping on a keyboard. People like her, it's always about the money. The power is just a bonus. If she thinks her cash cow is about to be slaughtered, she'll panic. And panicked people make mistakes. That's when I had an idea. It was simple, public, and perfectly legal. It used Brenda's own rules against her. The HOA bylaws state that any homeowner can call for a full, independent financial audit if they can get 10% of the homeowners to sign a petition, I said. Or a motion can be made at a public meeting. The next one is in 2 days. Santiago leaned forward. You make the motion publicly. You cite concerns about financial mismanagement. You don't mention her specifically. You just talk about transparency and fiduciary duty. You make it sound reasonable. Exactly, I said. The homeowners who are on the fence, the ones who are scared of her, but hate paying the high fee, still support it. It's a legitimate request. She can't shut it down without looking guilty. She'll be trapped. And when she's trapped, she'll get desperate. Evans finished, a grin spreading across his face. She'll reach out to her partner. She'll try to move money, destroy records, and we'll be watching every move. The plan was set. To make it official, I couldn't just spring it at the meeting. I had to post the motion to the official HOA community message board 24 hours in advance. That night, I sat at my computer and typed it out. I kept the language dry and professional. Pursuant to Article 7, Section 3 of the Maple Ridge HOA bylaws, I wrote, I, William Davis, resident of 24, Willow Lane, do hereby move for a full, independent forensic audit of all association financial accounts, contracts, and expenditures for the preceding 36 months. I listed a few reasons, citing the rising fees and recent community concerns about security and resource allocation. I didn't have to mention the false 911 call. Everyone knew what I was talking about. I took a deep breath and clicked post. The effect was instantaneous. It was like dropping a boulder into a quiet pond. My phone started buzzing with texts from neighbors. Finally, one wrote, "It's about time someone did this," said another. Vinny Costello sent me a picture of a flaming sword. Within an hour, the post had over 50 comments, almost all of them in support. People were tired of being bullied and ripped off. They just needed someone to stand up first. I felt a grim satisfaction. This was the weak point in her system. Her power was built on the illusion that everyone was afraid and alone. By making a public stand, I was showing them they weren't. We were a community, not just a collection of houses she could plunder. I was about to make a cup of tea when it happened. The lights flickered, then died. The hum of the refrigerator went silent. My computer screen went black. I looked out the window. It wasn't just my house. The entire block was dark. All the street lights were out. It was a complete blackout. But a block over, I could see the lights were still on. This wasn't a citywide power failure. This was targeted. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Evans. Power Hub C4 is down. Just your section. She's making a move. I stood in the darkness of my living room, the only light coming from the screen of my phone. This was a classic intimidation tactic, a show of force, a reminder that she could still reach out and touch me, that she could plunge my world into darkness whenever she wanted. It was meant to scare me, to make me back down before the meeting. A part of me was scared, not for myself, but for what this meant. It meant she was no longer just a petty tyrant. She was a cornered animal, and cornered animals are the most dangerous kind. I took a deep breath. Sarah's voice echoed in my head. Don't let her infect you. I wasn't going to get angry. I was going to get methodical. I grabbed the heavy, 5-cell mag light from my kitchen drawer. The beam cut a sharp, white circle in the dark. She wanted to play in the dark. Fine. But she was forgetting something. I knew the layout of this neighborhood better than anyone. It was my home, and I was ready to defend it. The darkness was absolute, a thick, heavy blanket that swallowed sound. I knew immediately I couldn't just stay inside. This power cut wasn't random. It was a message, and it was a cover for something else. I called Arjun. His house on the next block over still had power. My cameras on your side of the street are down, he said, his voice tight. But my drone is still up. It runs on its own battery. I have it hovering high on thermal. I see one heat signature moving away from the utility hub at the end of the street. Moving fast. Looks like they're heading for the back service gate. It's Walter, I said. It had to be. He was the one who would do Brenda's dirty work. He's running. The feds said to stay put. Arjun reminded me. They're not here, I said, my voice low. This is my street. I made a decision. I wasn't a cop. I wasn't a hero. I was just a homeowner who had been pushed too far. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I told Arjun to keep an eye on the drone feed and talk me through it. I put in my wireless earbuds, grabbed my heavy flashlight, and slipped out my back door into the pitch-black yard. The world was a maze of shadows. I moved quickly, staying on the grass, my footsteps silent. I knew every dip and rise of my neighbors' lawns. I cut through the baker's yard, skirted around Mrs. Peterson's prize-winning rose bushes. "He's on the bike path now." Arjun's voice crackled in my ear. "He's about 50 yards ahead of you. He's definitely heading for the back gate. Wait, I see something else. A golf cart. It's parked in the shadows just inside the gate. That's his getaway vehicle." A golf cart. It was almost comical. A high-stakes getaway on a vehicle with a top speed of 15 miles per hour. But in the enclosed streets of Maple Ridge, it was faster than running. I picked up my pace. I could hear him now, the clumsy sound of his dress shoes slipping on the asphalt path. He was breathing hard, panicking. "He's at the cart," Arjun said. "He's fumbling with the keys." I was close now, maybe 30 feet away, hidden behind a large oak tree. I could see Walter Finch's silhouette against the faint glow of the city lights beyond the gate. He finally got the cart started. The quiet electric motor whirred to life. He jumped in and slammed his foot on the accelerator. The cart shot forward. He was going to make it. He was going to get away. But panic makes you stupid. The service gate was narrow. To the right was a thick, manicured hedge that bordered the main road. To the left was the brick pillar for the gate itself. Walter, in his haste, took the turn too sharply. The right front wheel of the golf cart clipped the concrete curb of the path. The cart, top-heavy and unbalanced, tilted violently. For a moment, it seemed to hang in the air, balanced on two wheels. Then it crashed onto its side, sliding into the hedge with a loud, scraping sound of metal against thick branches. Walter was thrown out, tumbling onto the grass. He lay there for a second, stunned. I stayed in the shadows, my flashlight off, my heart pounding in my chest. I watched as he slowly, painfully got to his feet. He was dazed and limping, but he seemed to be mostly unhurt. He looked back at the crashed cart, then at the dark neighborhood behind him. He didn't see me. He just saw the ghost he was running from. He turned and scrambled through a gap in the hedge, stumbling out onto the main road and disappearing into the night. I waited a full minute, making sure he was gone. Then I walked over to the wreck. The golf cart was a mess, tangled in the hedge like a dying animal. And there on the asphalt, next to the driver's seat where it had fallen out of his pocket, was his cell phone. The screen was lit up. I picked it up. It wasn't even password protected. He must have just read it right before the crash. The screen was still lit. Walter really wasn't very good at this whole criminal thing. And on the screen was a single, damning text message received just minutes before. It was from Brenda Foster. It said, "Did you handle it? Meeting moved to tonight. Emergency. Clubhouse in 1 hour." My blood ran hot, and then cold. An emergency meeting tonight. She was accelerating the whole timeline. She must have found out about my audit post, and Walter's power cut was supposed to be a warning, but now he was on the run and she was panicking. She was trying to get ahead of the story, to call a meeting and probably try to have me expelled from the HOA, or worse, before I could make my case. I had to call Santiago and Evans. Now, I looked at the phone in my hand. This was the direct link, the digital thread that tied Brenda to the whole conspiracy. I could hear my best friend David's voice in my head. "You just keep pulling on the loose threads, well, the whole sweater will unravel eventually." I had just found the main thread. I looked back at the darkened houses on my street. This wasn't just about my home anymore. It was about everyone's. Brenda was trying to burn it all down to save herself. But I was standing here in the dark, holding the evidence that would put the fire out for good. The race was on. Her emergency meeting versus the full weight of the federal government. I had a feeling I knew who was going to win. "She's calling an emergency meeting tonight." Agent Evans's voice on the phone was sharp, alert. I stood in the dark by the crashed golf cart, reading him Brenda's text from Walter's phone. "In 1 hour at the clubhouse," I confirmed. Walter spooked. He cut the power, crashed the getaway cart, and took off on foot. He left his phone behind. "She's lost control of her number 2, and now she's trying to circle the wagons," Santiago said on the line. He was patched in from another location. "This is our chance. She's bringing all the players into one room for us." "Davis, we need you to go to that meeting," Evans said. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "Exactly what you were going to do tomorrow," Santiago said. "Act normal. Be the calm, reasonable homeowner. When the floor opens for new business, you stand up and you make your motion for a full financial audit. You follow the plan. Let her be the one who unravels. We'll be in the room with you, plain clothes. You won't know who we are, but we'll be there." "What about Walter?" I asked. "Don't worry about Mr. Finch," Evans said. "We have an eye on him. He's not getting far. Your job is to focus on Brenda. An hour later, the clubhouse was packed. The power had been restored, and the mood was electric with tension. Word of the emergency had spread fast. Brenda stood at the podium, her face a mask of false sincerity. She looked tired, but her eyes burned with a feverish intensity. She was trying to project an aura of control, but I could see the cracks. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the microphone. She launched into a speech about unprecedented threats to our community stability. She talked about divisive elements and individuals working to undermine our harmony. She never said my name, but she looked right at me with every word. I just sat there, my expression neutral, giving her nothing. Finally, she made her move. Given these serious threats, she announced, I am proposing an emergency vote to remove a member from this association for conduct detrimental to our community. The board has already voted in favor. Before she could continue, I stood up. Point of order, Madam President, I said, my voice carrying across the silent room. According to the bylaws you wrote, a vote for member removal requires a 10-day written notice to the member in question. This meeting itself is in violation, as emergency meetings can only be called for acts of God or threats to physical property. A murmur went through the crowd. People started pulling out their phones, looking up the bylaws. They knew I was right. I had her trapped in her own web of rules. This is an unprecedented situation, she sputtered. Then perhaps we should deal with the most pressing community concern first, I said, my voice still calm and even. The concern over our finances. I moved for a full, independent, forensic audit of the last 3 years of HOA spending. The room exploded. Second, someone shouted from the back. Yeah, let's see the books, another yelled. People started clapping. The support was overwhelming. Brenda's face went pale. She looked to her side where Walter Finch was supposed to be sitting, but his chair was empty. She was alone. All her power, all her control was evaporating in front of her eyes. She looked desperately around the room, her eyes wild. She was searching for an escape. And that's when Walter Finch burst through the side door. He hadn't run far after all. He had come back. He looked like a cornered rat, his eyes darting around, his suit rumpled and stained with grass. He saw the angry crowd. He saw me standing there. And he saw Brenda, her face a mask of terror. He knew it was over. And he snapped. Everybody just shut up, he screamed, his voice cracking. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, silver handgun. It looked like a toy in his trembling hand. People screamed. They scrambled back, knocking over chairs. My sister's words about rattlesnakes flashed in my mind. This wasn't a stick anymore. This was a bite. I didn't move. I just watched him. He wasn't a killer. He was an accountant, way over his head. He wasn't going to shoot anyone. He just wanted the noise to stop. He waved the gun wildly. I said, "Be quiet," he shrieked. He pointed the gun at the ceiling, and whether by accident or design, he pulled the trigger. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet hit one of the long fluorescent lights overhead. The fixture exploded in a shower of glass and white powder, plunging our side of the room into semi-darkness. For a heartbeat, there was total silence. No one breathed. Walter stood there frozen, the gun smoking in his hand, his face a picture of pure shock at what he had done. And then the room moved. But it wasn't the homeowners. From the back of the room, two people who I had assumed were my neighbors moved with a speed and purpose that was breathtaking. One was a woman in a jogging suit, the other, a man in a polo shirt. They covered the distance to the podium in seconds. Before Walter could even react, the woman had his wrist in a lock, and the man was pulling the gun from his grasp. It was over in an instant. At the same moment, by the main entrance, Agent Evans stood up from his chair. He flipped open a leather badge case, a gold shield catching the fluorescent light. "FBI," he shouted, his voice cutting through the panic. "Nobody leaves this room. You are all witnesses at a federal crime scene." The room went dead quiet until Carol from Unit 4 whispered, "I knew it." Phones came up. Chairs scraped. Brenda planted her hands on the podium. "You can't do this. I am the president." Agent Evans didn't blink. "Ma'am, sit down." From the aisle, Vinnie Costello stage whispered, "Somebody grab her clipboard." A few nervous laughs cracked through the tension. Brenda took a step back, knocked a chair, then steadied herself, eyes scanning for an exit that wasn't there. The kingdom had fallen. The queen was about to be taken. The chaos in the clubhouse slowly transformed into a controlled, efficient operation. More agents who had been waiting outside came into the room. They were calm, professional. They started separating witnesses, taking preliminary statements. The homeowners, who had been terrified moments before, were now buzzing with a mixture of shock and exhilaration. They were witnessing the downfall of a tyrant in real time. Walter Finch, sobbing quietly, was let out a side door in handcuffs. He didn't even look up. Agent Santiago, who had been the man in the polo shirt, walked over to me. He had a small cut on his cheek from the falling glass. "You okay, Davis?" he asked. "I'm fine," I said, my voice a little shaky. "You guys have quite a flair for the dramatic." "We prefer not to," he said with a wry smile. "But we adapt. Your calm under pressure kept the situation from escalating. You did good work." Agent Evans was already on his radio, coordinating his teams. I could hear him rattling off addresses. "The warrants are live," he said to Santiago as he walked by. "We are hitting Foster's house, Finch's house, and the office of Maple Ridge Beautification LLC simultaneously. Let's go get our evidence." This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment the truth would finally be dragged out into the light. I watched from the clubhouse doors as federal vehicles, the same dark sedans from the first night, swarmed into our quiet neighborhood. They moved with silent precision, pulling up in front of Brenda's pristine, two-story colonial home at the end of the cul-de-sac. Agents in jackets with FBI and IRSCI printed on the back piled out. They didn't smash the door down. They just knocked. When no one answered, they used a tool to pop the lock and disappeared inside. It was a surreal sight. This was Maple Ridge, where the biggest crime was leaving your recycling bin out too long. Now it was the subject of a full-scale federal raid. Neighbors were standing on their lawns, phones out, recording the historic event. Vinny Costello was practically vibrating with joy, giving a running commentary to anyone who would listen. A short while later, the agents started coming out of Brenda's house. They carried box after box of documents. They brought out computers, laptops, and external hard drives. They had found her nerve center. Evans set up a mobile command station on a folding table right there in Brenda's driveway. He and his tech team began tearing into the computers immediately. I gave my official statement to an agent, detailing everything from the first email to the planted cache. I showed them the doorbell camera footage of the bracelet and the HOA website photo to match. Every piece of the puzzle I had collected was now official evidence in a federal case. An hour or so later, Evans called me over to the command station. He had a triumphant look on his face. "You were right, Davis," he said, pointing to a complex diagram on his laptop screen. "She was running everything through a ghost server, hidden behind multiple firewalls, but she got sloppy. Left a digital key on her personal laptop. We're in." He showed me the real books. The scam was bigger and more brazen than I could have ever imagined. For years, Brenda and Walter had been padding every single contract the HOA signed. The lawn care, the pool maintenance, the street paving. They overcharged the HOA by 30 or 40%, and the contractors kicked that extra money back to them in cash. The fake company, Maple Ridge Beautification, was the crown jewel. It was a complete shell with an address that led to a post office box. It had billed the HOA for over $1 million over 5 years for work that was never done. The money was funneled through a series of accounts and ended up in an offshore bank. It was a multi-million-dollar heist hidden in plain sight, disguised as HOA fees. "The forged emails you got? We found them in the drafts folder on her laptop," Evans said, clicking through files. "Time-stamped and everything. She wrote them all herself." He pointed to another file. "And here are the property records. Guess who secretly owns Supreme Scapes? The company she was trying to make it look like you were pushing? It's registered to her maiden name." The whole frame job was designed to distract from her own corruption while setting up her next scam. It was diabolical. We had everything. The money trail, the planted evidence, the witness tampering, the conspiracy. The case was ironclad. There was just one problem. "Where is she?" I asked. I looked toward the house. "Isn't she in there?" Santiago walked over, his face grim. "She's not in the house. She slipped out of the clubhouse during the commotion after the gunshot. Her car is gone from the garage. She's a runner." Just then, Santiago's phone rang. He listened intently for a moment. "Understood," he said and hung up. He looked at me, then at Evans. "Local patrol just spotted her Mercedes on the interstate heading south. They tried to pull her over. She's refusing to stop." Brenda Foster, the queen of rules and regulations, was making a desperate, final break for it. The hunt was on. There was no dramatic, high-speed chase on the evening news. The FBI and the state police were far too smart for that. Instead of chasing Brenda at 100 miles per hour, they got ahead of her. They used a rolling roadblock, a carefully coordinated maneuver where police cars slowly bring all traffic on the highway to a crawl, creating a moving net. There was nowhere for her to go. I was still at the clubhouse, which had become the de facto town square, when the news broke. Someone had a small television on, tuned to a local 24-hour news channel. Suddenly, their live helicopter feed filled the screen. And there it was, a long line of cars on the interstate stopped, and in the front, a silver Mercedes boxed in by state trooper vehicles and the dark sedans of the FBI. The camera zoomed in. The driver's side door opened, and Brenda Foster stepped out. She was still wearing her beige pantsuit from the meeting. She tried to look indignant, to stare down the half-dozen armed officers who were approaching her. She held her head high, the very picture of wronged authority. But the helicopter camera was unforgiving. It showed the slight tremble in her hands. It showed the panic in her eyes. The mask was gone. We all watched, captivated, as a female agent in a windbreaker calmly approached her, said a few words, and then turned Brenda around and cuffed her hands behind her back. The Queen of Maple Ridge, the woman who had terrorized our neighborhood with petty rules and grand larceny, was being arrested on the side of a highway like a common criminal. A small cheer went up in the clubhouse. It wasn't loud or mean. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated relief. The reign of terror was officially over. I walked home through streets that felt different, lighter. The air itself seemed easier to breathe. People were out on their lawns talking to their neighbors, not in hushed, suspicious whispers, but in open, friendly conversation. A barrier of fear had been lifted, one I hadn't even fully realized was there until it was gone. Arjun was on his lawn, tinkering with a drone. He saw me and gave me a huge, beaming smile and a double thumbs up. Vinny Costello drove by on his riding lawnmower, wearing a colonial-era tricorn hat for some reason, and gave me a salute. "The revolution is victorious, General Davis," he shouted. I just shook my head and smiled. My sister Sarah called. "I saw it on the news," she said, and I could hear the profound relief in her voice. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Sarah," I said, sitting down on my front steps. "It's over. You did the right thing, William," she said. "You didn't let her win." My best friend, David, sent a simple text. "Knew you had it in you. Ribs at my place this weekend. Your victory dinner." It was his way of saying he was proud of me. I realized how much I had relied on that quiet, unspoken support from him, from Sarah, from Arjun. I hadn't been alone in this fight at all. Later that evening, as the last of the federal vans was packing up, Santiago and Evan stopped by my house. The plumber's truck was already gone from my driveway. "We just wanted to thank you, Mr. Davis," Santiago said. He looked tired but satisfied. "Your cooperation was essential, and your refusal to be intimidated, your methodical approach. It held this case together. You saved us months of work," Evans added. "You gave us the inside track. You connected the dots for us on the ground. Most people would have just moved away. You decided to stand and fight." "It's my home," I said simply. "You don't run from a bully who's trying to take your home. You just find their weak point and push." I asked them the one question that had been bugging me from the very beginning. "That black Jeep, the one she tried to pin on me at the start, whose was it?" Santiago allowed himself a small, rare smile. He gestured down the street where the last of the federal cars was pulling away. It was a black Jeep, identical to the one from that first morning. "That was one of ours," he said. "Surveillance team. We'd been watching her for weeks before we ever knocked on your door." She saw a strange car, and her guilty conscience filled in the blanks. She assumed it was part of some conspiracy against her, and you were the most likely leader. He shook his head slightly. She played herself from the very first minute. All we had to do was watch. They said their goodbyes and left, leaving me alone on my quiet street. The war was over. We had won. In the weeks that followed, Brenda Foster's empire collapsed. A judge officially dissolved the HOA, calling it a textbook case of neighborhood abuse and financial fraud. The state froze Brenda and Walter's assets, seized their accounts, and launched a civil suit to recover every stolen dollar. A court-appointed receiver stepped in to take over the HOA's records. It was worse than anyone guessed. Over $160,000 funneled into shell companies, duplicate invoices, and fake maintenance orders. But slowly, the mess got sorted. Refunds started showing up in mailboxes. Our HOA dues were cut clean in half. But the real victory wasn't just money. It was what we got back: freedom. Maple Ridge used to feel like a neighborhood under glass. Too quiet, too neat, too fake. Brenda patrolled like a warden. Every welcome mat was measured. Every curtain color policed. And now that fear was gone, kids started playing street hockey again. Laughter bounced off driveways. Arjun finally painted his garage door electric blue. Vinny Costello stuck a 10-foot inflatable flamingo on his front lawn just because he could. Nobody fined him. Nobody complained. We threw a block party to celebrate, the first real one in years. Arjun flew his drone overhead and took a group photo. Dozens of us out on the street smiling, laughing, music playing, the grill smoking up the whole cul-de-sac. It wasn't fancy, but it felt real. For once, nobody was performing for the HOA queen. That night, I sat on my porch with a cold drink in hand, watching the sunset glow off the rooftops. My mailbox was empty. No threats, no notices, just peace. The lawn needed mowing, and I didn't care. The petunias were in bloom. The neighborhood was alive. It felt like we'd finally broken a spell. And for once, I didn't expect a violation notice taped to my door about it. I thought about everything that happened. The sting, the takedown, the frame job Brenda tried to pull on me. She lied. She schemed. She weaponized a clipboard. And in the end, she lost. Walter folded, turned over the books, and gave the agents everything. Brenda tried to run, but the feds were already waiting. Her mug shot was on the news for 2 days straight. Then she vanished from local conversation like a bad smell the breeze finally carried off. She and Walter will face trial, probably prison. But in Maple Ridge, they're already done. Their names get whispered now like ghost stories. Their power's gone. Their little kingdom shattered. We took back our street, and we're not giving it up again.